Hi everybody, this is Cohen, and I've got a confession to make. Over the last few days, I've been having a very difficult time as I personally struggled to reconcile and process the actions of a world leader that goes against the grain of my values. But that being said, this video is not a political video, and I have no political preferences and leanings in this video. I shoot this video in my capacity as a speech coach as well as the host of the Wholehearted Leadership podcast. And in this video, we shall dissect the ministerial statement of Singapore's Prime Minister, Mr. Lawrence Wong. And perhaps we can unpack and learn some of the things that he has done very well through that speech. But the first thing we need to remember is that there's been a lot of chaos in the markets and in the world today, right? Stock markets have crashed and people are awakening to the news of recession coming. It is a time of uncertainty, of anxiety. And in times like that, we typically turn to our leaders to show up strong so that we can get a crumb of comfort and certainty. So let's unpack Mr. Lawrence Wong's ministerial statement and see what he has done so well. Let's go.
Mr. Speaker, we have known for some time that the world is in flux. The familiar signposts are fading, but the contours of the new global system have yet to take shape.
Here you see that Lawrence Wong started a little shaky. He was shifting a bit, he was moving a bit, and when you view that obviously through the screen, as most of us, millions around Singapore and around the world will be viewing this through a screen, you see that movements being very exaggerated on screens, and that betrayed perhaps he's a little nervous or he hasn't quite settled down yet. But let's continue watching this video and see how he built up a head of steam and eventually show strength.
So we are in a period of transition, uncertain, unsettled, and increasingly unstable. The recent
See, again he is shifting again, right? So again, I think he's really building up to his message, and of course, you can excuse him for feeling a little uncertain because he is also feeling uncertain himself as he launches into this speech. I think it's an uncertain period for every one of us. Let's continue watching.
Liberation Day tariff announcements by the US confirms this stark reality. The era of rules-based globalization and free trade is over. This marks a profound turning point. We are entering a new phase in global affairs, one that is more arbitrary, protectionist, and dangerous.
Again, a little bit of leakages here and there in his body language, and also you notice that he spoke rather quickly at the start. Again, you contrast this to how you see him progress through the speech. Let's continue rolling the tape.
For nearly 80 years since the end of World War II, America was the anchor for the free market economies of the world. It championed free trade and open markets and led efforts to build a multilateral trading system. This WTO system ushered in decades of global growth and stability. It allowed trade to flourish and lifted millions out of poverty. It benefited the world and contributed to America's own economic strength. And objectively, America continues to enjoy unrivaled economic heft. In fact, the US rebounded more quickly than other advanced economies from the COVID pandemic. It has surged ahead of all its major competitors in the advanced industrial world. But
so far, we see that he started on a very positive note, and I think that's very powerful. Why? Because I think the world and the audience do not need any more doomsday kind of messages. So he started with something positive. But he's not spinning anything, and he's also not making anything up. What he's sharing is indeed true, right? The US is the architect of this free trade agreement or this free trade movement around the world that has contributed to its wealth. He also said that in a way to really remind people what we had and what we are about to lose. So let's continue playing the tape.
Not all Americans feel this way about their economy. There are hollowed out towns in what was once America's thriving industrial belt. There are workers whose jobs have disappeared and whose incomes have stagnated. They believe that the American economy is fundamentally broken.
So here he contrasted this with the bad news story. So when you start with a good news story and a bad news story, that contrast creates a very deep emotional impact. So it is kind of like be able to process both the conundrum, both the good as well as the not so good. So in this way, he also portrayed a very balanced approach. It's not like he's painting all beautiful pictures. It's also not that he's all painting doomsday pictures. So he's sharing both sides of the coin. So he started very well. You could say that it's a very balanced approach. It's factual. It's also again, the good news and the bad news, the juxtaposition actually helps people to make sense of what we are, what we have ahead of us, what we have right now as well.
Discontent was already visible in the 1990s when protesters disrupted the WTO meeting in Seattle. Frustrations deepened following the global financial crisis of 2008 and more recently after the COVID pandemic. To be clear, the global economic system is in need of reform. Singapore and many others have called for changes, and we have been working with like-minded countries and partners at the WTO to reform its processes.
So, when he said to be clear, he has his flaws, and I think once again he showcased himself to be extremely objective, also showcased himself to be able to say, hey, yeah, it's not perfect. In fact, nothing is perfect, right? And so he's also in a way kind of like foreshadowing why the US have unilaterally decided to impose such strict tariffs, right? Why there's such a strong reaction. But at the same time, he also mentioned this word very cleverly. This word he mentioned is like-minded partners. As you know, he will go on to mention this word again and again throughout his speech, at least 3 or 4 more times, right? So why is this very important? In this way, he is making a call to action for people who are like-minded with us to step forward together. It's a soft invitation. At the same time, it is also creating very cleverly, without openly saying it, without explicitly saying it, a kind of a us versus them. Because we are like-minded partners, we will work and collaborate together. Some people are not like-minded, we shall not mention who they are, but let them be. We are going to work together. So he is already creating a kind of coalition. He's really making a very soft invitation to a coalition. And we all know that when we create a us versus them, we're invoking the tribal nature in our human nature, right? We all want to belong to a tribe. We all want to feel we are part of something together, right? So that's a very, very clever phrase that he used.
A key concern in America is China. The sense that the US had given away too much in allowing China to join the WTO, and that China competes on an unfair basis, for example, by heavily subsidizing its own companies, putting up non-tariff barriers, and restricting market access to US firms. These concerns should be addressed within the WTO framework.
Again, very clever. In every story, there needs to be opposing competitors. So here, because Singapore stands in the crossroads between US and China, so he is in the best position to bring up that US was very concerned about China. And then he did say that, well, China didn't exactly acted very well towards US, but the way to actually address this is through the WTO, not through these unilateral tariffs that is really slap in the face of the WTO rules.
In particular, the trade arrangements and concessions made in the past when China was only 5% of the world's economy should be updated when China now makes up 15% of the world's GDP. And if there are disagreements, they should be resolved through the WTO's dispute resolution settlement system, which has been paralyzed and urgently needs to be restored and reformed. But what the US is doing now is not reform. It is rejecting the very system it created.
Fantastic. You see that? He made a pause. It's almost like psyching himself up to deliver the message. And he delivered the message. I know it came a little bit further down. He didn't come out straight away and just fire from the fences. He didn't come out swinging for the fences. He built up his case, and then he delivered that punch. He said, what the US is doing right now is not reform. It's rejecting the system it created. So sometimes as leaders, as we listen to leaders talk, we need the leaders to tell the truth. We need the leaders to get to the point. Right? So he waited some time to get to the point, but I can see why he was doing that, because he's building a case. If he has gotten to the point too early, we would have maybe received his message as a little too sensationalist. We may have received his message as in coming out swinging, very competitive and combative. So he built up his case first, then he delivered the message. But it's important that you deliver a message, because as leaders, when you communicate, you can go through an entire speech and then you bury the message. You didn't mention what needs to be said. And people walk away feeling like you are just, pulling the wool over our eyes. You are just, being extra diplomatic, saying a bunch of hot air without saying anything at all. So he needed to tackle the elephant in the room. And I felt that in that very moment, he did. And as you see him deliver that message and the follow through, you see his facial expression is kind of like, there's this, I don't know how you describe that. The facial expression is kind of like a slight annoyance, a little, frustrated, right? And I thought that was great. Let's see how he continued to build up this message and continue to hit on the main points.
The US has imposed a blanket 10% tariff.
You see, there was a moment when you see his hand go up, right? When you see your hand move up, there was a moment. His hands involuntarily move up. This goes to show that he's a little agitated. Right? Usually when little involuntary hand movements like that show cases a person is being a little agitated and a little bit riled up. As you see right now, his facial expression at the start was rather neutral. Now his facial expression seems to be like he's going for the kill. Obviously he's not killing anyone. It's just like he's building up his case. He's really going for the jugular. He's really going to deliver his message.
On imports for nearly all countries. On top of that, it has layered on higher tariffs, up to 50% for selected countries, especially those that run a trade surplus with the US. According to the administration, the sweeping tariffs are needed to fix America's trade imbalances. But there is nothing inherently wrong about running a trade deficit. It simply means that American consumers are buying more from the world than the world is buying from America. Moreover, the focus has been solely on the goods trade. That only gives a partial picture. In fact, the US runs a surplus with many of its trading partners in services, exporting software services, education, entertainment, financial and business services. But this fact has been completely ignored.
This fact has been completely ignored. You see, again, he's really building up his case already. You can really see the tonality, the body language, everything has really changed, right? The trajectory, the direction of travel of where he's going with this speech has really changed. And here, I think at this moment, it's not just this moment, but of course, Mr. Lawrence Wong knows that he's not speaking in the world that we live in today. He's addressing the Singaporeans, right? But he's addressing the whole world, right? The world is watching, and he seeks to make that point, and that's very important as well, right? He needs to make that point so that his like-minded partners, so that the allies will also see this and latch onto that message. He's very aware, and I think that that's a great example of how a leader should present himself at a global stage. He's really coming into his own here.
In Singapore's case, we have an FTA with America. We impose 0 tariffs on US imports, and we actually run a trade deficit with the US, meaning we buy more from them than they do from us. If the tariffs were truly reciprocal, and if they were meant to target only those with trade surpluses, then the tariff for Singapore should be zero.
At this moment in time, you just don't feel like clapping, right? Because he's delivering the message. He's saying what needs to be said.
But still, we are being subjected to the 10% tariff. We are very disappointed by the US move.
We are very disappointed by the US move. You need to communicate the emotion, the overarching emotion of the day. Again, when leaders feel that the people on the ground are frustrated, the people are disappointed, the people are feeling anxious, it is important for leaders to communicate in a very emotionally intelligent way. Because if you do not express your emotion, you don't express how you exactly feel, then what happens is that people will kind of feel like, your speech is a little tone deaf, or your speech is really hitting all the, you're making a great analysis, you're hitting all the right points, but at the same time, you're not exactly in touch with the feelings on the ground. So by the fact that he says that we are disappointed by that, right, that's him making his stand. And I always consider that to be a very high emotional intelligence manner to express yourself, instead of coming out swinging and coming out accusing other people, finger pointing, blaming other people. Express your emotion, your experience of what you have received, of the reaction you received. I'm disappointed by your reaction, right? Instead of saying you hurt me, you cheated me, you pillaged me, you have been stealing from me. Those accusations are very wild. So he's able to communicate what needs to be said, but in a very measured and a very emotionally intelligent way.
Especially considering the deep and long-standing friendship between our two countries. These are not actions one does to a friend.
You see that? This, you see his body move. This, right? And I really like that. I don't think these are the type of things you can actually fake as a speaker. Very often when people speak, they often think, when I deliver this line, how should I move my body? How should I gesture? How should I don't think you can actually overthink things like that, because if you overthink things like that, right, like you're going to look really awkward. You're going to look very robotic. You're going to look like you're a bit misaligned, right? But you can see from his body language and his words and his messages, his tone of voice, everything is very, very aligned, very congruent, right? And that again, these are the things that people normally don't pick out, but as people listen to a speaker speak, right, they actually feel something. They feel whether this person is believable or not, whether this person is congruent or not. And so far, he's really very congruent. These are not the kind of things you do to a friend, right? Love it.
Asia bears the brunt of the US tariff increase.
You saw he almost like, after delivering that, these are not the things you do to a friend, he kind of like pause a while, kind of collect his composure, and then now he starts to talk about Asia as a whole, not Singapore versus US. These are not the kind of things you should do to a friend. Now he's talking about Asia as a whole. So you almost see him recalibrating, collecting his thoughts, settling down his emotions, and then now speaking in a more neutral manner. Let's watch.
Within the region, China is the hardest hit, facing a 34% tariff this round. And this is on top of the 20% tariff increase imposed over the last 2 months and the 20% from the first Trump administration. So taken together, the average US tariff on Chinese products now exceeds 60%. In Southeast Asia, the tariff rates range from 10% to 49%. These measures will accelerate the fracturing of the global economy. Instead of flowing based on economic efficiency, capital and trade will increasingly be diverted based on political alignment and strategic considerations. Several members have asked about the impact of the tariffs on specific industries in Singapore. We are assessing the situation carefully, but our deeper worry is not the direct impact that these businesses face. It is the wider implications for the global trading system and the world economy. So let me explain.
I like it when he talk about where he's now widening it. He's saying that, hey, several members have been asking me questions, and I understand your concern. But I think this is not just our concern. We need to understand the bigger concern. So he's now zooming out to the big picture, and he says, "Let me explain." Again, this is extremely powerful. This word "let me explain" is very powerful because, like I said earlier on, in times of uncertainty, we look to our leaders for strength. We look to our leaders for certainty, for comfort. Right? We need to know that our leaders are able to take us there. So when he says, "Let me explain," it's really setting the stage for us to say, okay, he's going to explain to us what's going to happen, he's going to explain to us what to expect. So you kind of settle yourself down as well to listen to him explain. So at this point in time, I'm just going to jump straight because I'm going to skip through the whole explanation part. You can watch the full video on YouTube. I'm just going to go straight to the final part, the ending of his speech, and how he ends powerfully and strongly.
We will continue to monitor developments closely. The government stands ready to do more if and when necessary.
You see, whenever he talks about action, right, his hands start to move as and when necessary. So this little, again, these gestures, right, I don't know how you look at it, because to some people it might look like energy leakages. It just feels like maybe a little fidgety. But then to me, I also feel like, because he's talking about we are ready to fight, we are ready to take action, we are ready to respond. So when you are ready to respond to something, your hands are moving is, I think, very natural, right? But to some people, they might see that this is a little, these movements, once again, like I said, is betraying a bit of nervousness, and again, it shows lack of power. Sometimes when you stand very steadily and deliver from a very, very stable footing, you come across more powerful. And again, I have to say that powerful is not equals to loud. Powerful is not equals to bullying. Powerful is not equals about lording over other people. Powerful is about being able to stand your ground, being able to show your substance, that you are not to be messed with. And this can be done in a very graceful, elegant, and soft way, as I think so far we have seen Mr. Lawrence Wong show. Let's continue playing the tape.
The resources to do so because of the financial discipline and prudence we've exercised over the decades. In this new environment, Singapore must redouble our efforts to remain a key node in global flows and a trusted business hub. We will forge closer links with like-minded partners.
See, he talked about like-minded partners again. And I really like the whole idea about Singapore needs to foster itself as a trusted business hub. And when you say that, you notice how he actually emphasized the word trusted business hub, right? So when you deliver key messages, you need to kind of slow down and really enunciate your words in such a way so that people feel the impact of what you're saying, right? And when he said trusted business hub, and I really cannot help but notice, but feel that that's a very powerful message, because at the present moment, with the actions of US, people are losing trust by the minute. People are losing trust for the stock markets are showing, right? The stock markets are crashing. It just shows investor sentiments, and people are not trusting it. And because of the kind of erratic policy making of the US, people are really not going to trust them. Businesses are not going to trust them. I mean, which business would want to actually invest millions and billions of dollars into a factory, knowing that policies may just shift very quickly and the carpet may be pulled out from beneath their feet, right? So, in contrast to the current climate, the way he said Singapore is a trusted business hub, I think is extremely powerful. The contrast with what we are seeing in the world today is very powerful.
Who share our commitment to open and free trade. The US may have decided to turn protectionist, but the rest of the world does not have to follow the same path.
Again, you see that? When he delivered powerful message, his mouth opened bigger. The rest of the world do not have to follow the same path, right? And I really like the way he delivered that as well. And again, this is a clear example of what is called common enemy. Right? I mean, if you think about it psychologically, right, it's like, how do two people become good friends very quickly? When they have a common enemy. When you join together and throw stones at the other enemy, at the other person, right? I'm not saying that we should throw stones at the US. Obviously, we don't. There's no reason for us to do so. But he's really clearly saying that US are not playing by the books. They are not what they are choosing to go the protectionist way. That is what they have chosen. But we don't have to choose that. So he's really sending a very clear message of alignment, an invitation to align with the like-minded partners.
We will identify other partners to join us and work around this.
He said that he noticed his head moving. We will identify other partners to join us. Right? This little head movements, right, actually is very powerful in emphasizing your point. Right? But it wasn't movement too much, it's like a little. And I think that's him delivering his message very, very strongly.
To ensure resilience and maintain critical parts of the multilateral system, while laying the foundations for a possible new and different global system that can be achievable later. And this is why I've made the effort to engage and visit my counterparts in different countries. I touched base with the UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday and have a few more conversations lined up in the coming weeks. They are all keen to do more with Singapore and to expand our economic cooperation, including in new areas like the digital and green economies.
He went into some details here, like I touched base with UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer yesterday. So when you share specific examples, like your message becomes more believable. Compare that if he just says, I have been touching base with some of the world leaders. But people are like, who? Who have you been touching base with? Right? So if you make general sweeping statements without going to the details, it's not quite believable. People are just hearing a very big, broad, vague message. But when you go into details like that, and when you talk about even like specific industry sectors like tech, like artificial intelligence, like green technology, right? When you give specific examples, it gives people something to cling on to, and I think that's a very powerful way of expressing himself.
In particular, we will strengthen our collaboration and integration within ASEAN. Last Friday, I spoke with Malaysian Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim. Malaysia is also the ASEAN chair this year. We agreed to accelerate ASEAN's integration efforts to make our region more attractive and competitive. A special ASEAN Economic Ministers meeting will be convened later this week. They will discuss further ways that ASEAN can work together to strengthen intra-ASEAN trade and to send a strong signal of ASEAN's commitment to regional economic integration. As a group, ASEAN will also continue to strengthen our links with like-minded partners in areas of mutual interest. Mr. Speaker, we are entering a changed world. The only way Singapore can make it through the gathering storm is to stay united, pool our resources, our resilience, and our resolve.
Our resources, our resilience, and our resolve. I really like this power of three, as well as there's alliteration over there. So when you speak with power of three, like triads, usually when you speak with triads, you actually have this nice tempo, and it's kind of like build up resilience, resources, and resolve. So that has a very nice ring to it, has a nice tempo to it. It makes his message punchier.
The government will do everything we can to steer Singapore through the choppy waters and make sure no one is left behind. We will keep our economy open, our society cohesive, and our institutions strong. We will create new value propositions for businesses and investors. We will act boldly and decisively when needed to ensure Singapore continues to succeed. Above all, we will put the interests of Singapore and Singaporeans at the center of everything we do. The road ahead will be harder. The dangers are real, but so too is our determination. In many ways, we are in a better position than we were 60 years ago when we became independent. We've built deep reserves as a strategic buffer. We've forged a strong compact built on solidarity and trust in each other.
Remember, he started the speech talking about the US history of how free trade has helped US to prosper. Now, he's coming towards the last 1 minute of his speech, and he's talking about how Singapore is much better compared to 60 years ago when we started. So there's a little bit of a symmetry between how he started his speech and how he ended his speech. And again, this is extremely powerful, right? These are the kind of things that really, this symmetry makes your speech very coherent. Your symmetry makes your speech seem very balanced, right? And also at the same time, he started at US, he now ends with Singapore because he's delivering this message for the Singaporeans to tell us that we can ride this storm together.
And most of all, we have our ingenuity and wit, our grit and gumption, a never-say-die spirit that has seen us through every crisis and will carry us through the ones to come. So, Mr. Speaker, I say to this House and to fellow Singaporeans, do not fear.
I like it when he says, do not fear, and he punches the table, right? So these are little gestures, right, that actually really just add a lot more impact to your speech. Usually politicians will have gotten a lot of speech coaching, and I think that these are signs of getting some speech coaching here, right? It's like you need to escalate to a kind of a crescendo. The only thing I would say for this one is I think he delivered a little too quickly. He says the only thing, Mr. Speaker, the only thing I'll say to this House and to fellow Singaporeans is do not fear. I think it would be more powerful if he had paused before he delivered that do not fear. He says, and Mr. Speaker, I'll say to this House and fellow Singaporeans, do not fear. See, if he has paused just ever slightly, maybe for a second, because when you say, I say to this House and fellow Singaporeans, so I say to you, then you pause, people will be like waiting for you. It's like, oh, what is he going to say? What is he going to say? And then we deliver the message, do not fear. There will be even more power. That's my recommendation for improvement.
Now, more than ever, we will stay resolute and united. Our little red dot will continue to shine. In a dark and troubled world, Singapore will hold our ground as a beacon of stability, purpose, and hope. Thank you, sir.
If you watched to the end of this video, I thank you. And Mr. Lawrence Wong, I have been watching him, when he first became Prime Minister, people were like, okay, like, how will he lead? But this is one of the first crises that his mettle is being really tested. And he has really showcased in this one speech alone that he has the ability to stand up and deliver what needs to be delivered. He's able to communicate it with a very balanced approach. He's able to hold his ground. And I think that's a very important key for leaders. Being able to regulate your nervous system. Because when you have a regulated nervous system, it stops you from overreacting. It stops you from acting from a place of your anxiety. It stops you from acting from a place of bravado and strength and bullying and finger pointing. So that's very important. The leader needs to be the strongest person in the room. And strongest doesn't need to be loudest. Strongest really means that you have your nervous systems regulated. When you have a regulated nervous system, you are then able to communicate your message in a powerful yet graceful and elegant way. He was strong when he needed to be strong, and he was neutral when he needed to be neutral, and he was invitational when he was invitational. Once again, this is not a political commentary. This is really an evaluation, unpacking of Mr. Lawrence Wong's speech. I am extremely honored to be living in Singapore with a leader that gets it. So if you are interested in engaging me as a speech coach, or to engage me to train your team of leaders in how to communicate in high stakes, high pressure situations, you can get in touch with me through the form below. Once again, thank you for watching this video. Do like and share if you found this to be helpful and may help somebody that you know. And if you'd like to subscribe so that you'll get notified of any new videos that we're dropping. Thank you for watching.